Shalom. I am Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to talk about something in this week's Torah reading of Chukat, and specifically, I'm going to talk about why it's important not to be like a snake. In this Parsha, we have a very interesting story. We have, once again, the children of Israel in the desert before they come into the Holy Land, complaining to God and to Moses. This time they're complaining, why are you bringing us here? They wanted to go right into Israel, and God didn't let them go right into Israel, as we know. And we're going to die in the desert. We're going to starve. We don't have any food to eat, any water to drink. Of course, those complaints were without foundation, because they not only had food and water, they had the manna, which tasted like anything they wanted to. If they wanted it to taste like a barbecue, it would taste like a barbecue, whatever it wanted. So they had everything. They weren't lacking anything, but they were complaining. And the punishment, first of all, the Moses prayed to God to stop the plague that happened. What was the plague that happened? The plague was there was an epidemic of poisonous snakes that were biting people and poisoning them and killing them. So Moses prayed to God that they be healed and that the plague would go away. And God, in answering his command, his request, said, what you have to do is you have to build a pole and put a snake on top of the pole. And Moses, in fact, built a pole and put a copper snake on it. And he said, whenever the people look up at the pole, at the snake, then they will be healed. And that's what happened. So first of all, what are we talking about? Why is this punishment with the snake? The snake is referred to as a symbol of evil, of wickedness. We first encounter the snake, the Nachash, in the Garden of Eden, when the snake enticed Chava to do what God had commanded them not to do, to eat from the forbidden fruit. And God was so upset with the snake, and he told the snake, you will crawl on your belly, and you will get your food as you're crawling along. I don't want to hear from you. I'm giving you your food. It's right in front of you. Just take it. But I don't want to hear your voice. You're wicked. And that's why the snake is referred to as the most wicked, because God did not even want to hear from the snake anymore. He fixed the snake up naturally to be in a position where the snake would never have to ask God for food or for parnasa. And the Gemara in Tanis talks about at the end of time, all the animals will come together around the snake, and they'll say to the snake, and they'll say, "We don't understand you." Said, and the Nativot Shalom brings this. He says, a lion eats its kill, a wolf devours its kill, but these are all killing to eat. But you kill just for no reason. What pleasure do you get from that? And it's because of that the snake is considered to be the worst of all. And the snake cannot approach God. What was the sin of the children of Israel here? They were complaining. They were complaining that we don't have things like everybody else. You're giving us everything. I mean, in the desert, God provided for everything. they were protected from the snakes. They were protected from the hot weather and the cold weather. They were given food to eat. They were given water to drink. They had no need for anything. But they were complaining nonetheless because they wanted to be like everybody else. They were spurning the gifts that God was giving them. And as a result, they stopped looking to God for help, looking to God for their sustenance. And the Davidovich brings an interesting Torah on this portion. He says the word for snakes, as it's used in this Torah reading, starts with a hey, hanachashim. And hanachashim means it's some specific snakes, which he says it means that the snakes were there before. And it says that later on in the book of Devarim. But until that day, until this day of the sin of the people by complaining, God protected them from all harm. The Anane HaKavod, the clouds of glory, went before them and killed all the snakes and scorpions. So they weren't bothering them. But in their complaints that they wanted to be like all other nations and that God should lead them according to the rules of nature, therefore God said, okay, he removed his hashgacha pratis, the constant supervision, personal supervision over us, and did what they wanted. And now they were affected by the rules of nature and bitten by the snakes. And Rabbi Melech Biederman points out that it's not easy to live with total dependence on God. But the benefits are great, because if you totally depend on God, if you're always looking upwards to God, God will help you. And that's what happened with the snakes. What was needed was, as a cure, the people had to look up at the snake. Remember that they had acted as a snake who doesn't give any thanks to God, and recognize by looking up that their only salvation would come from God, not from anything else. And they had to learn to trust in Hashem. Kape el Hashem means to trust and turn your eyes to God at all times. And this indicates that we must recognize and be thankful when we receive God's greatness. Part of our problem is we get so used to having things we're just used to having these wonderful things happen. We have food, it's easy to go to the supermarket. We don't have to struggle. Yes, you might struggle a little bit to earn a living, but basically you're earning a living, most people, God willing, and therefore you don't pay a lot of attention to God. And the key is, if you're praying for something, once you get what you're praying for, don't stop praying. Don't be like the snake. Continue thanking God. Continue praying to God. And there's a beautiful story that Rabbi brought down just recently. He talks about a story told about Rabbi Cheskel Levenstein, Zatzal. He said that a young yeshiva student, his family had considered a shidduch, a marriage proposal, with a young woman, and he went to ask Rabbi Levenstein what he should do, because the other family, the family of the proposed bride, wanted a lot of money for the dowry, much more than they could afford. And his question was, should they go through with this marriage proposal, this shidduch, even though his father's poor man didn't have the money to pay for it? So Rabbi Cheskel asked the yeshiva student, is your father self-employed, or does he have a job working for somebody else? The yeshiva student said that his father was self-employed. So then Rav Levenstein said, in that case, your father can take on this obligation to pay this dowry, and God willing, he'll be able to cover the expenses. And the yeshiva student said, respectfully, what difference does it make if he's self-employed or has another job with somebody else? He says, if you have a job with somebody else, you're going to be relying on that person to give you the check for your work every month. But if you're self-employed, you have to always be turning to God and asking for God's help constantly. So the yeshiva student and the family took his advice. Shortly after that, the father received a message that he would begin receiving reparation money from Germany, and therefore he had enough money to pay the dowry. The message is so important. Look to Hashem. Be thankful for everything. Don't take anything for granted. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.